Welcome back, everybody, to the channel. I'm really glad you're back. It's Matt here. Hope you guys are doing well. So, I had a couple topics that I wanted to bring up today, but let's try and stick with this one because I've been thinking about this a lot. Um, and that is your past. When people think about their past, everybody goes back to. I like to go back to kind of like my childhood days. I have to say, I had a pretty good childhood growing up. Besides, I would say the only part of my childhood that was a bit rough was involving my dad, which he wasn't really around much. And later on in life, realizing that he's quite narcissistic. So I actually ended up having to, out of my own well being, had to cut him off, which was I think in 2021. So that would be about 5 years ago. So I haven't seen him in 5 years. But besides that, my childhood was actually really good. Um, I had a really really important family member, and that would be my grandfather. Well, I'm half Italian, so I call him Nonno, my Nonno. One of the most important people in my life, one of my best friends. Sadly, he passed away around the same time that I kind of cut off my dad. So a lot was going on that year. And Missy Nunno, if you're watching somewhere out there, I miss you. Um, Still think about you a lot. But anyways, I don't want to make this post about grieving people, but I always think back to my childhood days. What was I feeling during my childhood days? Like, how was I, know, the thoughts that I have now are more into, adulthood and what am I doing for a career? What am I doing moving forward? Do I want a family now? Do I not want a family? And, I want a family, but man, it's so messed up out there right now with, you know, I've been on some dates and all, but, nobody's really been of interest yet for me. Nobody's really clicked yet. But it's just, I wouldn't even, want to bring anybody, you know, here right now, to be honest. Like, it's just so crazy. But, yeah, I was thinking about my childhood a lot and how that went. And also, a big part was like my teenage years, man. Like I'm thinking back to those years. I was such a rebel. When I was at my parents' house, I would always get into so many arguments over stupid things. Um, I just I there would be times where my mom, she divorced my dad, but she remarried. So she remarried, and my stepdad came into the mix, and we got along at the beginning, but as time kind of went on, not so much. Things kind of went downhill real fast in my teenage years, and now that I'm an adult, kind of realizing how he acts and stuff, I've kind of backed off and kind of understand himself, why he acts like that, and kind of distance myself. So we don't really click in that way either. But you know, to dwell on the past, I have to say, like, if you have one of these, if you've had a terrible upbringing, like just horrible, if you were to go back, it'd probably make you feel, depressed, sad, angry, resentful, all these things. They're okay to go back on every once in a while, but to kind of dwell on these kind of things in the past, like there's nothing you can do to change it. You can learn from what you've done before and realize some mistakes you've made where you went wrong with people. Um, I find that helps me to sort of forgive people. Like, knowing my dad being as narcissistic as he is now, I still in some ways, forgive what he's done. Like, it just, people are the way they are because of the way they are. They've also had a pretty bad upbringing. So it's like that generational trauma that seems to not stop. But somebody has to put a stop to it. I did. So did my sister. She had to cut off my dad as well. So, that affected me a lot because, not having a father figure, especially through my teenage years, since I was such a rebel and, thought I knew a lot and thought I knew everything and just was kind of just just all over the place. It was tough. Like I had to learn a lot of things the hard way, and I'm still am now. And not having like that role model in our family is it sucks. So, I've had to learn how to do a lot on my own as a man and how to, you know, go through life, kind of, you know, build myself up as a man, which I'm doing right now. But I do have moments where I'm like, man, like I wish I had more of a, just a connected family. Like I wish, my mom, you know, would have just stuck with one guy, we would have just been a big happy family, but that's just the way it is, right? Um, I'm lucky to even have the family that I have, which is a total blessing because, um, I have just so much support from everybody. So anyway, you know, thinking about the past a lot, and a lot of the times I tend to forget about the present. I tend to forget about, day to day things like, what my schedule is going to be like tomorrow. So, and then I tend to think a lot about the future. I tend to think, I'm sorry if I'm kind of tired, so I apologize if my thoughts are kind of running a bit loose. But I think the saying is like, if you go into your past, you get depressed. If you're in the now, I don't know what the saying is, or if you're in the future, you're anxious, you're nervous, you're scared. And the one thing that I think a lot of people um, tend to do is when they think about, especially the future, they tend to worry a lot. They tend to worry about what's going to happen. They tend to worry about what kind of direction they're heading in. And every time I've done that, especially from I've only been here around just on Earth for 27 years, but I've noticed that every time I would think a bit too far ahead and be overly concerned, overly anxious about stuff, it tended to sort of unfold in that kind of way, especially these last 3 years. I've had great moments, don't mind you. Like, you know, I've had great moments, but it's just it feels like a never ending roller coaster that I've been on. Like it hasn't really been this like, gradual just take off, right? It's been I've taken off and then I've crashed and then I managed to get back up and then I've crashed again. And it's just been like all these valleys that I've been like going up and down on and up and down. And, now I'm kind of exhausted, but I feel like this chapter of my life is kind of ending in a way. And I'm going to make this prediction right now for myself. In the next 2 years, everything is going to completely change in what I'm doing as a career, um, my financial situation, my the home that I'm living in might change. I might be moving somewhere else. I think a lot of things are going to change, um, quite dramatically, I think. But this is just something to document so I can look back on later. But you guys will be the judge of that in time. And so will I. I'll come back to this video and think about, you know, what I was thinking during this time and how things have drastically changed from where I was then. So, hope you guys didn't find this too boring, but I just thought I'd bring up, you know, try not to dwell on the past. It's good to go back once in a while to kind of reevaluate some things, but it also can make you feel extremely depressed. It can also make you feel quite sad about stuff, quite nostalgic. And nostalgia is good in a way, like you think about all the good times, but you have to realize that that's way ahead of you now. Like you can't go back to those times. I had a moment before, my grandfather passed away, because the year leading up to it, I knew he wasn't well. His health started to deteriorate. He's a strong Italian guy. He'd always be in the backyard growing his own vegetables and his own garden and stuff, which I miss. I'm not gonna lie, but I just knew at that time, like, these good times are gonna end. It's unfortunate, but life's gonna go on, and I'm forging on. It's it's gonna be quite the journey so far. So stick around, everybody, and see you guys on the next video, and we'll come up with another topic. Peace. Good night.